Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dowram. In today's video we'll be covering Assassination Rogue PvP guide for patch 6.1 as well as the upcoming patch 6.2. This guide will take all 6.1 changes as well as applied changes for 6.2 in consideration, and this guide will be the most up-to-date guide of how to play Assassination from rotation to how to set up burst within PvP situation. Now let's get on to the video. First thing for Assassination we should talk about is the stat priority. You should stack Master at the very top of the ladder. Then it's a choice between versatility and crit, and then it's a choice between haste and multi-strike. The reason we stack Master is because we benefit from poison damage as Assassination. Master increases our poison damage from poisons on weapons to venomous wounds, which provide passive damage, as well as in Venom, which provides the burst portion of damage. So Master benefits our passive and burst damage. Afterwards, it's a choice of versatility or critical strike. Whichever one you decide to go for, just make sure to look on your gear. As long as you concentrate on Mastery as your primary stat on all of your gear, you should be just fine, and you should enchant all your weapons, rings, neck, and cape with Mastery. If anything, for secondary stat you can go with crit, as every time you generate combo points, and if the combo point generating ability crits, you have a chance to generate an extra combo point on the target, allowing you a little bit more combo points, which allows you to manage your energy a bit better, allows you to manage your burst a little bit better, allows you to manage your utility a little bit better. So, the way I prioritize my abilities and stats, Mastery, and then crit, and then everything else afterwards. Next we'll cover talents, and the first tier of talents we have Night Stalker, Subterfuge, and Shadow Focus. Now all three of these abilities are good for Assassination depending on what you're trying to do. The best option I would prefer, in my personal experience of playing Assassination, is Subterfuge, because you're able to land 3 different types of CC, if not more, within the 3 seconds after your opener. And even if you do get caught out of an opener, you still can land your opening rotation starting with Cheap Shot, which is what I prefer to do. Of course, if you never have trouble getting caught out in the opener, you can always go for Shadow Flexion for a relatively energy-free opener, or Night Stalker. Because of our 4-piece bonus, you can use Vanish and then Eviscerate into your target for 50% extra damage. Night Stalker has never been as beneficial as it was now, and with the 4-piece bonus for Assassination, Night Stalker is a very viable option. Although Night Stalker, in my opinion, should not be used with Death from Above, as it'll only work for the AoE portion of Death from Above. So with that said, you can choose any one of those 3 talents, but again, I'm going with Subterfuge for most of my PvP situations. The next tier includes Nerve Strike, Combat Readiness, and Deadly Throw. Deadly Throw off the bat I set aside. I feel like Deadly Throw is a better option for subtlety, since Phantom Knives can generate combo points based on how many people it hits, so generating 5 combo points is a breeze. But for Assassination it's not quite as easy, since Mutilates already as is cost 55 energy. Yes, there's a chance to get an extra combo point if you crit, but it's still harder to line up those 5 combo points, so I toss out Deadly Throw as is. Nerve Strike is a great option if you're facing against caster cleaves, or any teams with a caster, or any peelable teams that you have to peel in arena, but otherwise I prefer Combat Readiness for most situations. Even when running on Battlegrounds, I would rather get a full up wall if I haven't have a chance to face against melee. Nerve Strike is a better option when it comes to peeling, but I prefer an on-demand, on-use defensive ability when I need it. But this one is up to you, and it depends which one you should choose depending on who you're facing against in arenas. For the third tier, it's really a choice between Elusiveness and Cheat Death, although Elusiveness definitely takes a huge step ahead. First things first, Leeching Poison you might think is a great option for Assassination since it's a poison, but Assassination does not benefit in Leeching Poison in any way. Leeching Poison generates leech instead of a poison effect, so hence for Assassination doesn't quite work the same way a Deadly Poison would work or a Wound Poison would work. Neither does really Crippling Poison, so because it does have a heal, you would think it's viable, but it's just not big enough heal when it comes to PvP. So really it's a choice between Elusiveness and Cheat Death, and Cheat Death is an ability that can be procced only once you're low health, while Elusiveness can be kept up and maintained at all times, making rogues as tanky as they are. So my personal choice, which is a way better option, which a lot of people will agree is much better, is Elusiveness, and I would definitely slot that in for my Assassination Rogue. The fourth tier is the Mobility tier, which is Burst Speed or Shadow Step. Now both of them are really good, but for Assassination I prefer Burst Speed mainly because we have such a large energy pool to begin with, where I feel like I can manage my energy a little bit better. Although if you're more about sinking all of your energy into damage, you can roll Shadow Step. Both abilities are very viable for Assassination and are very good. I definitely will stay away from Cloak and Dagger as it limits your mobility, while the other two give you a little bit more looseness to it, depending on whether you are energy savvy or you would rather get an instant teleportation to your target without having to spend energy. This one is up to you, but for Assassination, I prefer to run Burst of Speed. The fifth tier is really between Internal Bleeding and Praying the Weak. Some of you have said Dirty Tricks is a great option for Assassination, but I wouldn't quite agree with that. Reason being is Dirty Tricks is okay, but Assassination damage isn't quite dot heavy, and I'll show this to you in today's video. Because Assassination damage isn't all that dot heavy, Dirty Tricks is an okay of an ability, but it doesn't quite create the utility that Assassination needs in battlegrounds or arenas. Internal Bleeding is definitely a powerful bleed that can definitely go well together with all the other bleeds and poison effects that we have, creating a little bit extra dot pressure. Or Praying the Weak, which can give us increased amount of burst as 10% damage increase with our 4-piece bonus, and the crits that Assassination can pull off is definitely a massive increase in damage compared to Dirty Tricks. So this one was a choice between Internal Bleeding for a little bit more consistent dot-based damage on kidneys, or Praying the Weak for increased damage during your burst phases. In the 6th tier we have Shuriken Toss, Anticipation, or Mark for Death. Now off the bat I'm going to say that Mark for Death, to me personally, is the best option a rogue can grab. Anticipation might have its own usefulness, and Shuriken Toss does have range to it, but Mark for Death is an ability on 1 minute cooldown that generates 5 coma points, which can be used offensively, defensively, and as utility, which is something I would never forego on any spec of rogue. In the 6th tier for level 100 talents, all 3 of them are viable for Assassination Rogues. They go in this order. Death from Above is the most viable because it increases so much damage output for Assassination, especially if you are able to line it up with a 4-piece bonus or with Vendetta. Now, afterwards, Shadow Reflection is a great option as well, as it keeps your target down, locked down just like a combat rogue, allowing you to get a good opener, and allowing you to invest more of your energy into seeping damage into your opponent, while the Shadow Reflection will keep them stunned back to back. Venom Rush is a good passive ability. It doesn't bring quite as much potential to Assassination as Shadow Reflection or Death from Above, but it still is a decent talent. It does increase your energy regeneration with more targets you have poisoned, and being a poison based spec, this will force you to AoE your targets a little bit more often, and will spread your damage around equally around your opponents, giving you a little bit more energy in order to finish off those key targets like healers, or flag spinners, or flag carriers, or even tanks. All 3 abilities for the 6th tier are really good for Assassination, and again they go in the best order to worst, from Death from Above to Shadow Reflection to Venom Rush. These are my standard preset talents for Assassination, and I switch them around depending on which situation I'm in. If I'm in for a long game, I would rather grab Internal Bleeding. If I'm facing against caster based teams, I grab for Nerve Strike, and if I'm going to be, let's say, rooted all the time or trapped by hunters, I might as well grab Shadow Step. Otherwise, this spec doesn't really change for me too much, just changes appropriately depending on who you're facing in order to account for whatever situation you may be thrown to when it comes to PvP, within battlegrounds or in arenas. For Assassination Rogue, glyphs are very simple, as there's 2 core glyphs that I'll run, and I definitely would recommend you guys to run. One of them is Energy, the other is Disappearance. Then for the 3rd slot, there's a couple options. You can go with the Glyph of Blind, Glyph of Garrote, or Glyph of Cheap Shot. Those are the standard glyphs that I run, and you can run them depending on where you are, what you're doing, what you're running, who you're playing against. Glyph of Blind is definitely my general option when I'm running Battlegrounds, or when I am trying to line up CC in an arena match. Glyph of Cheap Shot is something I would need if I'm going for a heavy peel type of playstyle, where I would grab Nerve Strike with it. And Glyph of Garrote is something I would grab for if I'm going against caster based teams. As Assassination, you don't really want to let your poisons fall off, so Glyph of Blind is only used for specific situations where you want to make sure none of the dots are on your target. Otherwise, just grab glyphs depending on the utility that they provide, depending on what you're looking out for or what you're trying to accomplish, whether it be with your comp or with your group in the battleground. The glyphs don't really matter too much, and there's definitely more choices that you can choose from depending on your situation, but these are the very basic glyphs that you can run. These are the basic glyphs that you can run in an arena and battlegrounds, and those will definitely serve you well. Again, you should take a look at all the glyphs and choose them appropriately to your situation. Now let's talk about the dot-based ability for Assassination. As some of you guys have said that Assassination is heavily reliant on dots. While that is true that Assassination does have some dot mechanics to it, be it with poisons, rupture, bleed, and venomous wounds proc from rupture, Assassination isn't as heavy poison as you might think. I would say something like Affliction Warlock or Shadow Priest are definitely more poison heavy, or dot based heavy, and even something like an Unholy DK is more dot based heavy than Assassination is. From here I decided to take a test, put it on 10 seconds, on one trained dummy, I'll try to apply 4 combo points, apply rupture, and just see just how much damage I can deal out of an enemy target. Maybe you won't throw in 1 mutilate. And for the other trained dummy, I decided to apply only 2 combo points worth of rupture and see how much damage is dealt. When you think about Assassination, our damage doesn't come from rupture, but it comes from venomous wounds. Venomous wounds procs every time rupture bleed ticks. The rupture bleed itself is very weak and can only be increased only so much, depending on how many combo points you spend for it. So when you play an Assassination, remember, we're not as heavily dot based, and rupture isn't as heavily important in our rotation. You only need to have it up on your target when you're dealing damage, as it procs venomous wounds. Outside of that, the only thing that matters with rupture is the duration of it. The bleed itself, again, is very weak, so be sure to read up on your abilities, be sure to read up on your passives, just to make sure that you know where the damage is coming from for Assassination. Now for the rotation. Rogues don't really have that much of a rotation, but more a priority based system, and Assassination system is very simple. You generate your combo points with Mutilate or Dispatch when your target is low in health, below 35%. Once the target drops below 35%, Dispatch will be available and will cost almost half the energy of Mutilate, but it will generate only 1 combo point instead of 2. You want to keep up Rupture on your target because it procs venomous wounds. You also generally want to use Deadly Poison unless you're in an arena situation where the healing reduction is heavily required. Deadly Poison will allow you to deal the maximum amount of damage, as there is the poison application as well as the dot mechanic with Deadly Poison. Because you are so heavily with poisons, even with your mastery, the amount of damage you can deal with your poisons alone is definitely higher than going to be your mutilates or dispatches in certain cases. Also, once you build up 5 combo points and you no longer need to put a rupture on your enemy target, you can either use Envenom or Death from Above, which is an empowered version of it, but costs 50 energy and is a 2-parter ability. Now, the way you would use your abilities is you want to first maintain and establish Rupture on your target. You want to stun your opponents when you're lined up for damage, and you want to use Envenom every time you're trying to deal damage. The way damage comes from Assassination is a little bit slow and steady. It's more like when rogues are stealthy, their damage is very stealthy when it comes to Assassination. Instead of huge crits and huge hits, it's a lot of little small hits which very quickly stack up onto one another, especially if you're able to keep your target locked down. The way I think of the way I damage my opponents when playing Assassination is I'm almost melting them, bit by bit, little by little. Except when our burst rotation comes into action, which happens with our Vendetta, perk, as well as a 4-piece bonus. The way you burst Assassination Rogue is very interesting, as it uses Vendetta in a particular way. Vendetta, once applied on an enemy, will mark him for death, making you deal 30% extra damage to the target. While that 30% passive damage increase is nice, it is not on demand as something of Affliction Warlocks Haunt. Affliction Warlocks have Haunt up more often, so when we use Vendetta we want to get as much out of it as possible. So what we want to look for when it comes to PvP mechanics is the perk from Vendetta. Once activated, your next ability, be it Mutilate, Dispatch, Ambush, or Envenom, that also accounts for Death from Above, second portion of the finisher, the Envenom portion, that'll be a 100% guaranteed crit. Now, the way you would apply it for PvP is, while the passive damage increase of 30% is nice, you really want to be looking for getting as much out of that perk bonus from Vendetta. So the way I would line up for burst damage as Assassination, I would make sure the target has Rupture running on them, I would get 5 combo points, use my Trinket, stun my target to lock him down, Vendetta, mark for death, Death from Above if you run Death from Above, otherwise you would use Envenom, and after you have critted with your ability, you can apply your 4-piece bonus, where you can Vanish, Envenom your target, where Vanish would generate 5 combo points on your target, and your next Mutilate, Ambush, Dispatch, or Envenom will be a 100% guaranteed crit. The way I'm looking at it, Assassination is it has a lot of good spread pressure. It can definitely cleave targets down with the poison damage. It can definitely melt targets down once it's able to sit on them. But what you want to take account for is the perk and the 100% guaranteed crits out of Assassination in order to deal the big damage in PvP. You're not quite an Affliction Warlock, but you're kind of sort of over there. You're not quite all about spreading damage and melting multiple targets together. but you might as well get use out of all the perks that you get as Assassination in order to deal the surprise damage in burst as quickly as possible. Otherwise, Assassination is very easy to play, it's very easy to line up, the burst definitely takes some practice in order to get used to, but the spec overall is very powerful as it just deals damage without any basic stipulation that would require you to build up any insight or build up any particular event or particular condition even on your enemy target. This makes Assassination Rogue a very powerful PvP spec and a very powerful spec for rogues overall. It definitely is an easier spec and definitely something I would guarantee you to try if you're new to rogues or if you're trying to learn more about rogues or if you just want to have fun bursting people down on an easy to play rogue spec. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and hopefully you enjoy playing yourself some Assassination. Hopefully this video was very much helpful to you guys, and hopefully the guide, the talents and everything was very much an insight to you guys on what you can do and how you can get started in playing Assassination Rogue in PvP. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. My name is Dalrin, and I'll see you guys in the next one.